how do we provide authentication to a user who is basically using Windows using Kerberos? I will explain it to you in detail, but I need some inputs because we have already
Provide
seen
the
this.
tickets or tokens to the users for authentication.
Packets or tokens, sure. Anything else? Was it token or something else? A technical term. It was not a token, I guess. Ticket, correct.
सर मैं टिकट बोला था स्टार्टिंग में.
Okay, okay. Basically a ticket. Okay. So let's assume I'm giving you a real life example to explain what exactly is Kerberos so that things will be clear, and then I will show you the technical terms. Okay. So suppose this is a scenario where you are wishing to get some service from a particular server on the internet or a particular machine on the internet. For example, you are doing some railway ticket booking, or instead of railway ticket booking, you are visiting Book My Show to book a ticket, okay, for a particular movie. So in this case, let's assume that you want to communicate with that server, but it has to go through the internet, right? And as we all know, internet is not that secure. Anyone can hack into your communication and try to get details of what you're actually sharing with the server. So what exactly happens is, this is the entire scenario. This is how it looks to the user, but inside it, what exactly happens? Let me show you. Suppose you are visiting a particular movie theater and you want to book a ticket. Okay, so what you will do basically is you will first of all go to the booking counter. Okay, suppose this is your booking counter. You will go to the booking counter and ask for the ticket. The person sitting behind the booking counter will book your ticket and grant you a ticket. Okay, so this is what we call as a TGT. As you all know, TGT stands for, let me know.
टिकट गranting ticket.
Correct. Ticket granting ticket. Okay. So this is your initial ticket. Okay. TGT, which is granted by an authentication server. Authentication server is nothing but the counter from where you have got your initial ticket, which is called as ticket granting ticket. Okay. So now, with this TGT, what you will do is you will now proceed towards the movie theater. You have got the ticket. Now you wish to go to the movie theater, and before entering the movie theater, the movie might be having multiple screens, right? So on your ticket, the screen number will be mentioned. But if you are visiting for the very first time, you won't be knowing where the particular screen is. So what exactly happens is, just before entering the movie theater, there is a security cabin where the security people check your ticket whether you have the authentic ticket or not. Correct? So this is what we call as one more server, that is called as TGS, or ticket granting server. So basically what happens is, you can assume that you got your first ticket from the authentication server. You got the ticket. Now you want to watch the movie. So you are proceeding ahead. You went to the screen. You went to the theater. But now you are not knowing which is your screen. So what you want to do is you would like to ask the security person, or the security person will in fact check your ticket whether you have got a valid ticket or not. If you have got a valid ticket, what the security person will do is, the security person will show you that so and so is your screen, screen number 2, screen number 3. He will guide you towards that particular screen. This is what actually happens, right? So once you get the guidelines, once you know that so and so screen is where your movie is being premiered, you will then move towards that particular screen. That is what we call as your final server. That is what is known as service server. Okay, so this service server is nothing but your movie screen where you actually would like to watch your movie. So this is how the entire schematic diagram of a Kerberos engine works. Okay, so let me tell you once again, let me brief you once again. The very first thing you do is you contact the authentication server. The authentication server will ask for some details. I will show you the technical diagram just after this. Just imagine that you are going to watch a movie. You want the ticket first, so you will contact the ticket counter. This authentication server is nothing but your ticket counter. So once you buy the tickets from the ticket counter, you will bring the ticket which is called as TGT. Okay, this is your ticket. So now you will move ahead towards the screen, but you are not knowing where your screen exactly is. You will check your ticket. Screen number 2 is mentioned over there. So you will move towards that screen. Now, Just before entering the screen, you will encounter a security person over there. That security person will check whether you have security check. Okay, the security person will check whether you have an authentic ticket or not. You can assume this as a ticket checker on the train. So what basically he or she will do is he or she will check whether you have got an authentic ticket or not. If it is valid, then he or she will guide you towards your screen or movie theater. This is what happens in real life. Okay, your movie theater is nothing but this particular service server. This is your actual server. In this diagram, you can see you're getting communication from this server. This server is nothing but your service server. Okay, clear? So this is how the things look like to the common people who are using the internet. But behind it, this is what actually happens. Okay, the entire lot of communication happens over there. This box is what we call as a key distribution center, which you might have studied in your previous semester. It is called as KDC or key distribution center. Clear? So now you may ask me why we are doing this topic now once again. Because as we all know, we are learning authentication from the last 2 or 3 lectures, right? So this is one of the most used authentication protocols worldwide. Kerberos is used for Windows authentication as well as other authentications which require the user to verify themselves as well as the server. In this case, what is happening? The client is getting verified by this key distribution center, and the server is also getting verified to the client. Why? Because this person or the TGS over here is verifying the server's identity. As I told you, the particular theater may be having 2 or 3 screens. The person, the security check over here, directs you towards a particular screen where your movie is being premiered. So what exactly is happening over there? First step, the client is getting authenticated by this key distribution center, and second, the server is also getting authenticated to the client with the help of this TGS. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? Kindly let me know if you're having any doubts so that I could move ahead for the technical demonstration. Any doubts, please let me know.
No, sir, not right now.
Okay. Okay. You got what I wanted to explain, right?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. So let's start with the technical definition. I have got 3 topics for today. So whenever it's complete, I will end the lecture. So I have one more lecture after this. So let me complete this. Okay. And let me know whenever you are facing any doubt so that we can stop and revise it. Okay. So now let's draw it step by step. I could have shown it with the help of an already available diagram, but that wouldn't help my cause because I want you to learn step by step. Okay. So very first thing is there's a client and there is one authentication server over here. Authentication server, if you compare it with the previous case, it is nothing but the ticket counter. So very first thing what you want to do is you would like to contact the ticket counter. Okay. So in real life, what happens? You can't just you can't just go and pay some money and get the authentication done. Okay, in real life that doesn't happen. What exactly happens is when you want to communicate with an authentication server, this entire thing happens in the background. Okay, you don't need to go and arbitrarily do anything on your own. So what exactly happens is the very first time you try to log in onto a computer or a server, it asks you for your user ID and password, right? The authentication step, very first thing. Over here, what happens is instead of asking for the password, the authentication server simply asks for a client ID or a CID. Okay. What do you mean by client ID? Client ID is nothing but your user ID in simple terms. Okay. This is your first step. Let me zoom it up. This is your first step. The authentication server asks for a client ID from the client. The authentication server is basically having a table which is having the user IDs, the passwords, as well as the private key of each and every user. Now you know what is private key, right? This entire Kerberos authentication is based on private key, symmetric key authentication. Okay. So once the client enters the client ID, the authentication server will check whether that client exists in its server or whether that client exists in its database. If the client is not available in the database, the authentication server will simply send a request to the client that you are not registered on my domain. Kindly register yourself first. What exactly happens whenever you are visiting a website for the very first time? They give you two options: either you log in or you sign up, right? Either you sign in or you sign up. If you are already a registered user, you simply need to sign in. But if you're not a user, registered user, the website asks you to sign up yourself, right? This is what happens. The same thing happens over here. If you are an authentic user or if you are already existing in that particular database, then you simply need to provide your client ID. The authentication server will then proceed with the next information set. But if you are not existing, it will ask you to register yourself. This is the very first step. Second step is the authentication server then checks whether you exist in the database or not. If you are an existing user, what the authentication server does is it will again contact you, and this time it will send you some information. What is that information? This is step number 2. It totally consists of 6 steps. Authentication server will then send you a message which is the TGS session key. Okay, let me write it first and then I will explain. This is the TGS session key encrypted with the private key of the user. Private key of the user. In this case, I am writing private key of CID or private key of this particular client ID, comma, TGT. Now, can anyone tell me what exactly is happening in this step so that I can move ahead after this? Try to compare this with your previous diagram. What was the previous diagram? If anyone has drawn it, or let me show it to you. This was your previous diagram. Okay. Kindly check this diagram once again. The client over here contacts the authentication server. The authentication server in return gives the TGT back to the client. Right? This is what used to happen. The same thing is happening over here. If you pay attention properly, over here what is happening? The server or the authentication server is sending the TGT, but along that it is also sending some more extra values. What are these values? It is the session key of the TGS or the ticket granting server which the client will contact next, okay, which is encrypted with the private key of the CID or the client. Can anyone please unmute themselves and tell me what exactly is happening over here and why it is happening? Come on, quick. We already covered these topics in CSS, so you should be having a knowledge about it. Okay, don't worry about the why part. Tell me what exactly is happening. That much will be enough. Come on, quick.
So basically, the authentication server is giving the client a specific session key so that खाली वही session में वो मतलब अपना जो भी काम करना है वो कर सके. उसके बाद the key won't be active and the मतलब जो ticket भी दिया है that also won't be valid. Same as the theater case. मतलब वो 3 घंटे के move के बाद you can't reuse the ticket.
But why is it getting encrypted? That is my question. Why we are encrypting it with the private key of the client?
ताकि सर कोई बीच में से उसको बाईपास करके खुद यूज करके एज द क्लाइंट अपने को ये ना कर सके.
Okay.
खुद को दिखा ना सके.
Okay. What about others? Why are they not explaining what I'm trying to ask from them? Kindly be active. Kindly be interactive. Okay. सिर्फ attendance form भर के मतलब नहीं है. I will obviously go through it. Who exactly is active or not? Right. What I will try and do is I will now take out names, call out names, and ask randomly. If you're not giving me answers, I will simply call your name and ask you. Okay. Then you have to give me replies. Okay, this is what I will do next if you are not answering yourself. Okay, so try to understand what I am trying to explain. Very first step is the client is contacting the authentication server by providing the client ID. The authentication server is sending the ticket granting ticket back to the client along with some additional information, which is nothing but the session key of the ticket granting server encrypted with the client's private key. Why they're doing so is because we are in the very first step trying to authenticate the client. Okay, if the client is genuine, then the client will be having the private key, right? So the client only will be able to decrypt the message, correct? The message is nothing but this particular message I'm trying to explain. This particular message the client will be able to decrypt, and once the client decrypts this message, he or she will then be able to access the message present inside that packet, which is nothing but the session key of the ticket granting server. Clear? Is it clear till now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So let's move to the step number 3. The step number 3 is now the client has got the ticket granting ticket. What the client should do now? Tell me. Try to compare it with the previous step. Now the client has got the ticket granting ticket. Ticket उसको मिल चुका है. वो कहाँ पे जाएगा अभी next step?
सर्वर पे.
सर्वर पे डायरेक्टली जाएगा. या बीच में एक और स्टेप था? TGT use
security
correct security check, or simply you can say
authenticate कराने जाएगा सर की को.
Correct. So it is TGS, right? Ticket granting server था ना? पिछला वाला डायग्राम कंपेयर करके देखो, it was TGS, that is nothing but a ticket granting server जहाँ पे वो खुद को authenticate करता है, right?
Yes, sir.
So now the client will contact the TGS. The TGS is nothing but the security guy who will tell the client where to move ahead or where to go. So in this step, what will happen is the client will directly contact this particular TGS. This is step number 3. Step number 3 is all about, let me zoom it up. Okay. Step number 3 is all about, उसको पिछले वाले step में TGT मिल गया था. So now the client will use that TGT and encrypt this with this session key. Okay. Now tell me why we are doing this. We are encrypting this with the session key. Is there any significance of this step? Why are we doing this? Step number 3, very important step in this process. Yes, Dhruval, kindly answer me. Dhruval Shah.
सर एनक्रिप्ट करने के बाद वो
हाँ सर, अगर बीच में से अगर कोई किसी ने वो टीजीटी ले लिया तो वापस वो सर्वर के साथ कम्युनिकेट कर सकता है.
Okay, but ये why? What is the significance of this step? Session key से encrypt करने का मतलब क्या है?
ताकि वो अगर सपोज मूवी 3 घंटे का है तो तभी तक ही चलेगा.
नहीं वो इम्पोर्टेंस नहीं है. टाइम लिमिट इज नॉट इम्पोर्टेंट ओवर हियर. सेशन की का यूज क्या है वो मैं पूछ रहा हूँ. और वो एनक्रिप्ट कर रहा है यूजिंग द सेशन की. यहाँ पे आंसर दिया है विकास ने. ट्राई टू रीड इट. ही इज सेइंग बिकॉज द यूजर हैज द सेशन की. यूजर इन दिस केस इज नथिंग बट द क्लाइंट. क्लाइंट को सेशन की तभी मिल सकेगा अगर वो एक्चुअल क्लाइंट है तो, बिकॉज ओनली द क्लाइंट विल बी हैविंग द प्राइवेट की ओवर हियर, राइट. उसी क्लाइंट के अलावा किसी और के पास प्राइवेट की नहीं होगा. यू आर ट्राइंग टू यू आर अंडरस्टैंडिंग व्हाट आई एम सेइंग. अगर वो क्लाइंट जेन्युइन है तो करेक्ट. अगर वो क्लाइंट जेन्युइन है तो ही उसके पास प्राइवेट की होगा खुद का. देन ओनली द क्लाइंट विल बी एबल टू decrypt this message. Then only he or she will get the session key. If at all the session key is valid, the client has got it, then the client can use it to encrypt this message TGT. Clear? So basically what is happening, we are doing a double check whether the client is authentic or not using this third step. Clear? So over here the TGS or the security person is trying to check whether the client has got the genuine movie ticket or not. ये step पीछे से compare करो. If you compare it with the previous steps, over there what happened, the security guard would physically check the particular ticket and see whether it is valid or not. Same thing, we are basically validating the client once again. But this time, the authentication server is not validating, the TGS is validating the client. Clear? So we have done 3 steps. What would be the 4th step? Once the security guard checks whether the client has got the valid ticket, what will be the next step? The security guard will do some communication with the client, right? So this will be the direction of that communication. Yes. So this is your fourth step. What will be the fourth step all about? Now the client is authenticated by the authentication server as well as the ticket granting server. What could be the fourth step? Try to compare with the previous example, what I had explained earlier. After the
So,
communication is done. Huh.
accessing the functions or the features, accessing the
Functions or features, what?
functionalities or the function services provided by the server.
Okay. No, not exactly. Try to compare. Last example में क्या बोला था मैंने? Once the security guard is convinced that the person is having the particular value, particular ticket, he or she will direct that person towards the screen, movie theater, right? So in this case, we are not having a movie theater. The server we're having it. So what the TGS will do is the TGS will give directions to the client that so and so screen is premiering a particular movie. So go there and watch your movie. Same concept happens over here. The TGS will provide the service granting ticket. If you remember, we had done it. That service granting ticket can be used to access the server. Okay, so this particular message, message number 4, will consist the server information in form of the SGT, which is called as service granting ticket. Along with that, a service granting ticket session value or session key. Now, what is this thing? In the previous case, we saw that before communicating with the TGS, the authentication server had sent this particular TGS session key. So over here, if you want to communicate with the server, the final server, then also this particular TGS will generate a session key using which then you can communicate with the service granting server. Over here, make a change. It is service granting server session key, SGS session key. Okay, so these two values will be provided. First up, the service granting ticket using which you can directly communicate with the server, and second parameter is the service granting server session key. Using these information, you can then communicate with the server without any issues. What will be the step number 5? Now we have not yet drawn the server, so we need to draw the server box over here. Okay, this is nothing but your service server, the actual movie which is being premiered. Okay, this is called as service server. So what will be the step number 5? Step number 5 will be simply the client will contact this particular server with the use of the parameters which he had got in step number 4, which is nothing but the service granting ticket along with the session key. So basically, whatever information he got in step number 4, that entire same information will be passed on over here in step number 5. Step number 4, okay. Rajita, let me repeat it once again for you. Basically, if you see in step number 2, what exactly happened is, in step number 1, the client had contacted the authentication server. So in response to that message, the authentication server had sent some information. That information was nothing but the ticket granting ticket along with the ticket granting server session key. Okay, same concept is happening over here in step number 4. Step number 4 में क्या हो रहा है? Instead of the authentication server, this time the ticket granting server will be sending the session key of the server, because next step is the client is going to communicate with the server, right? So the client should also know the information about which server he or she should communicate with. Try to compare it with the previous examples. You want to watch a movie, but you don't know which screen is actually premiering your movie. So the security guard will direct you towards that screen. Same thing happens over here. The ticket granting server will tell you which particular server is having your data. You should contact that particular server with the help of this SGT or the server granting ticket. This server granting ticket consists a lot of information inside it. For example, server ID, server number, the IP address of that server, and lot more things. So I'm not going into detail. I'm just explaining it to you in an overall fashion. So once this particular server granting ticket information is provided to the client then communicates with this final server with the help of the same message repeated once again. So what happens now? The service granting ticket along with the session key is replayed back to the server, and final step is nothing but the server will contact the client and provide the information the client requires. Okay, these are not bidirectional, these are single directional arrows, so pay attention properly. It is nothing but the final response which is sent to the client back. So I hope this entire Kerberos system, Kerberos authentication protocol is now clear. If not, kindly ask me, because we are repeating it once again. Previous semester also we had done the same topic, but I don't know how much in detail you had done that time. So this time I am pretty sure I have done it in more detail, including real life examples also. So kindly let me know if you are well versed with this particular topic now. If you're having any doubt, you could simply ask me. Or if it is clear, then kindly let me know. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, thank you. So I hope this is clear. So let's move towards our next topic. These are the next two topics left for the day. So now, so far we have completed what is authentication. We have already seen what are the various types of authentication. That is something you know, something you are, and something you have. Okay, we completed what is biometrics in the last lecture. So now in this lecture, we are already done with authentication. We have already seen what is an authentication protocol, Kerberos. So next up, we are moving towards the next part, which is called as access control. This is also very important because I had already explained that authentication and authorization goes hand in hand. Once you are completed with the authentication process, you move on towards authorization process. Authorization process is nothing but access control. For example, you have some resources in your server and you wish to provide or you wish to grant those resources to only a certain set of people and not everyone. So you would impose some kind of authorization rules on it. Those rules are nothing but called as access control. Okay. So we will we will learn what are the various access control methodologies used in the real life market right now. And there are two types. Basically, there are three types, but in our syllabus, we are having only two of them, which are called as DAC and MAC. The full form is discretionary access control and mandatory access control. Okay. So we'll start with the discretionary one first, and then we will move towards mandatory access control. So basically, this is all about two models which we are going to learn, discretionary one and mandatory one. Discretionary is a less strict model as compared to mandatory, as the name implies. Okay, so let's start with the very first, discretionary access control. It is all about, let's understand that there are two entities involved. First up, we are having subjects, and second, we are having objects. Subjects are nothing but the users, okay, and objects are nothing but, we have already seen in the last lecture, the files or the what you can say, tangible elements the users want to access. Okay, it could be a file, it could be a folder, it could be a document, anything of that sort. So very first thing is, it's basically a means of restricting access to the objects, okay, by identity of the subjects. It's simple. Let's understand what exactly I want to mean. You're having a set of subjects. The subjects could be users, and you're also having a set of objects. For example, a set of files, and you wish to restrict the certain files to certain set of users only, so that if you have a password file, you would not like every user to access that password file, right? So the set of rules or the restrictions you impose upon those files is what we call as access control. And in case of discretionary access control, just have a look. What happens is, the user who has got access to a particular file can share his or her access to the other users. Let me take a very common example. If I'm having a Google Drive access, if I have access, edit rights to a particular file or folder, what I could do is, I could share those edit rights with any of my friends, right? I can do so because I myself have the edit rights. So I can share on or pass on those edit rights to one of my friends because it is solely at my discretion. Discretion is nothing but it's my choice. So for example, over here, the user A has got, basically user A is the owner of a file, file 1. He or she can then simply pass on the edit rights to user B or user C, for example. So what exactly happens is user A has all the rights of the file 1. He or she can pass on the edit rights to any of his friends or colleagues or whatever, because that is the sole discretion of the user A. This is what we call as discretionary access control. Kindly have a look at this definition once again, read it once again. It is a means of restricting access to objects based on the identity of the subjects and or groups to which they belong. The next point is very important. The controls are discretionary in the sense that a subject with a certain access permission is capable of passing that permission on to any other subject. That is what I had just now explained with the help of that access control matrix or the Google Drive example. If I have rights to a particular file, I can pass on the rights to any of my friends or colleagues because it is solely at my discretion. That is what we call as discretionary access control. What are the drawbacks of this particular model? Kindly let me know. What could be the drawbacks of this? Yes, kindly let me know.
So the one who has the edit rights can also means have wrong mediums or dangerous motives, and it can be shared to wrong people, and it can pose a
Correct,
threat.
correct. This is what is the main disadvantage of this model, because if the people you are sharing a file with, okay, are not having clear intentions, they can even read or they can even uh, leak the information to some other people. As in turn, the information keeps on percolating or information keeps on changing, or as mentioned by Prajakta, they can be edited by any people present over there who has particular rights of that particular file. So what exactly happens is, if you are sharing a confidential information with a friend or colleague, just make sure that you don't give any edit rights to them. Otherwise, they can read it as well as make changes. So basically, this is all about keeping the rights of that file to yourself and sharing it very judiciously. Otherwise, what can happen? That person can share it with hundreds of other people, and they in turn can share it with more people, and this will keep on going on, and a chain will form. So we don't want that. Correct. If someone with edit rights gets compromised, then the data gets compromised as well. Correct. So this is what happens. The integrity as well as the confidentiality of the information loses. Confidentiality, as in if you share this information with someone else, they can read the message and the confidentiality is lost. Similarly, if that person does some edits or does some changes to the file, the integrity as well gets lost. So this model is not that strong. So we came up with the next model, that is mandatory access control. But before that, there are two definitions. Let's understand those. First one is access control list. Can anyone tell me what exactly is this list all about by looking at this diagram? Access control list, and next up we are having capability list. So these are the two definitions. Kindly look into the diagram and let me know what exactly this list is all about, if you get an understanding, or else I will explain.
It is giving specific rights to specific user. मतलब user एक खाली own कर मतलब own करता है तो read and write privileges है उसके पास, but उसने B को सिर्फ read privilege दिया है, C को read and write दोनों.
No. Kindly check what exactly is common in all these. For example, you can see that there are 3 users and 1 file. So what is common between them? The file is common,
File.
right? Correct. So we are discussing about the access rights of that file in this case. Whenever we are saying we are discussing about access control list, we are discussing about the access rights of a particular file for various users. But whenever I'm talking about a capability list, it is related to the access rights of a particular user on various files. Try to understand the difference between both of these. Access control list, or ACL, is all about the access rights of various users for a particular file, whereas this capability list is all about the access rights of a particular user for various files. You got the difference? You understood what I'm trying to say?
Yep.
Yes? Okay. So in this case, ACL is all about file number one. File number one, okay, can be read as well as written by user A. Similarly, it can be read by user B and read as well as written by user C. So in this case of access control list, we are discussing about the permissions of a file. Whereas in capability list, we are discussing about a particular user or a particular subject and then the rights of that particular user for various files. So in this case, we can see that user B has got read access for file 1 and so write access for file 3 and so on. So whenever we are discussing about ACL, you have to mention the common thing, which is the file in this case, or the object. Whereas in case of C list or capability list, we are discussing about the subjects and not the objects. Clear? Questions are asked generally, what is the difference between ACL and CL, or access control list and C list? Clear? So this was all about this particular topic, which is discretionary access control. Okay, so this is just a schematic diagram where you can see a user S1 has got read access to a particular file F2. Similarly, the user S2 or the subject S2 has got write access to a particular file P2 present in the memory. What S1 does is S1 can grant S2 the read access to F2. Otherwise, what you can see is S2 has not got any access of file F2. But as we are following the discretionary access control, the subject S1 or the user S1 can arbitrarily grant the user S2 a read access to the file F2, which was possessed by that particular subject S1. This is how the particular discretionary access control works. So this is how you can share information with any of your friends or colleagues with the help of this discretionary access control. So next, let's move on towards our next topic, which is called as mandatory access control, and it's really tricky and it's really what you can say interesting also. Let's see what exactly this MAC or mandatory access control is all about. This particular model, what it does is it converts each and every subject or each and every user into certain classes. Let's take an example. It has got two models. We'll learn these two models. If you wish, you can write it down in your notebooks somewhere. Mandatory access control is all about two models. The first one is called as, the name is kind of funny, it's called as Bell-LaPadula model, based upon the two inventors, Ben Elliott and Len LaPadula. So based upon those two inventors, this particular model has got its name. Okay. And second is this model, which is called as Biba integrity model. So we are going to learn about these two models in detail. Let's start with the very first model, which is called as the Bell-LaPadula model. Within brackets, kindly write down, in the case of this model BLP, it is all about confidentiality of the information. Whenever we are talking about the BLP model in short, or the Bell-LaPadula model, we are discussing about the confidentiality of the information. Whereas the second model, Biba model, is all about the integrity of the information. Okay, so let's start with the very first type of mandatory access control, which is called as Bell-LaPadula model. What is it all about? Kindly have a look over here. As I told that we have to divide the subjects into various clearance levels. Clearance levels is nothing but your present access rights. For example, in army or military, we have different positions or we have different ranks. So for example, the topmost in this case is colonel, then major, then sergeant, and then a private. Okay, this is about the US Department of Defense. They have designed this model. So based upon those ranks, the example is framed. So the topmost level is for colonel, then major, then sergeant, and then private. And all of these subjects or all of these users have a predefined label of security. For example, the colonel can access top secret as well as all of those informations which are present beneath it. The colonel can access top secret, secret, confidential, as well as unclassified data. But when we talk about a major, the major can access secret, confidential, and unclassified only. the major can't access the top secret information. You're getting what I'm trying to say? Based upon your present class or your present security clearance, you can access only those files which you are allowed to access. For uh, following the same logic, if you are present at the private label of security, you can only access the information which is present at unclassified level. You can't go above it. So this is what we call as the multi-level security model. Okay. So the very first model is Bell LaPadula. Now let me show you what exactly I'm talking about. Write down in your notebooks. In Bell LaPadula model, there are two properties. Same way in case of Biba integrity model, there are two properties. These are extremely confusing. So take out your notebooks and write it down. Otherwise, you will forget in the next lecture. Bell LaPadula is all about the very first property is called as simple security property. Or in short, you can write it down that simple security property of Bell LaPadula is all about no read up. I'm repeating, no read up. The same thing which I had demonstrated just now. You can only read the contents which are present at your level or beneath your level. For example, the kernel can access top secret as well as any of the information present at any levels below it, because the kernel is at the topmost level. So it is called as no read up. Why we are doing it? What is the use of this? Kindly let me know. This is all about confidentiality of information, right? So kindly let me know why we are doing this. Quickly. We are having just 10 minutes.
Sir, because the people at the higher ranks might be that qualified or maybe that trustworthy कि उनका कुछ ulterior motives नहीं होगा, तो they have the access as well. The new people who are arriving or the lower means the lower in ranks might not be those authentic or
Okay.
trustworthy.
Okay. So I can take that as an answer. So basically, the same thing happens if you are in military. You may not want each and every information to be passed on to the lower ranked personnel, right? So, for example, the colonel may have some critical information of state of national security. That information he or she may not want to pass on to the other people who are present at a lower rank. So, same thing happens over here to secure the information of to secure the confidentiality of the information. It is not leaked down to the personnel present below your current level. So, for example, the major is restricted to only the secret information or confidential information or unclassified information, because we want to make sure that the information is remaining confidential so that the goal of security, which is called as confidentiality, can be achieved. In this case, you can see that no read up means you can simply read whatever is present at your level or below your level, but you can't read any information which is present at any level above your present level. Clear? This is what we call as the first property, known as simple security property, no read up. Now next move on to the next property within Bell LaPadula itself. Each and every property, each and every model consists of two properties. First one, Bell LaPadula, is consisting of this simple security property or no read up. Similarly, next property is called as a star property or no write down. So now tell me, what could be this particular model all about? No write down. How can we ensure the confidentiality of this particular model with the help of this technique, which is called as no write down? Can anyone tell me? No write down. For example, a kernel can only read information present at that particular level or anything below it, but the kernels can't pass on any information to a level present beneath it. The same thing is happening over here. You can't pass on the information to your juniors. You can't pass on the information to your subordinates. You can only read whatever is present below your level, but you can't write anything down. Over here, take an example of a private. Private is nothing but a user, a person who is at the lowest level or who is at the lowest rank. That private can only pass on the information to its seniors, right? So either the private will be able to access the unclassified file, he or she can write information into unclassified file, but the information has to be passed to the higher authorities. He or she cannot write anything down. Okay, the information has to go up. The information has to be written up. It cannot be written down. Correct. Kernel can't change the data of secret. Very well answered. Kernel can only pass on the information to the higher authorities. In this case, kernel is at the highest level. So let's take the example of a major. Major can only take the information from sergeant and private and pass on the information to the kernel. The major can't make any changes on its own because the major has also got to report to the kernel, right? So to avoid the loss of confidentiality, the message has to go upwards. Now, Kathy has a question: can private write data of confidential? See, look it in this fashion. We are not writing data. What we are doing is we are passing on the information to the level which is present above mine. So what I can do is I can read the information as a private from unclassified level and then pass on that information to the sergeant by writing it into the confidential level. Getting it? So basically हम लोग pass कर information. We are not writing anything. We are passing the information to our seniors. The seniors can then keep on passing the information upward. We have to follow the hierarchy. Being a teacher, I can't simply contact directly with the students. I have to, if I have anything to pass on, I can let my HOD be aware of it, and the HOD can then pass on the information to the students. You're getting the hierarchy. We have to follow the hierarchy. We can't take decisions on our own. We have to read the content and then write the information, or basically pass on the information to our seniors. The seniors can then take the call whether to accept it or reject it. So these two things, no read up and no write down, is concerned with this particular model, which is called as Bell-LaPadula model. Clear? So now the next model is very confusing. If you okay, let me pass on the attendance link first, then I will come back to it. Okay, so now let's understand the second model, which is called as the BIBA model. BIBA model is all about the integrity. This is exactly reverse of what we have seen so far. We have seen confidentiality so far, so let's talk about integrity now. These are the information, these are the labels. Again, there are subjects and objects. The first property of this BIBA model is called as simple integrity axiom. In the previous case, it was simple security property, but in this case it is simple security axiom, and it is entirely opposite of what we have done so far. In simple security property of BLP, it was no read up, if you remember, correct? Now in this case it is no read down. Now can you tell me what exactly I am trying to say over here? Why no read down? Understand, we are talking about integrity. Any example? Kindly write it down in your notebooks, otherwise you will forget what exactly is the model all about. Bell-LaPadula model was all about confidentiality, and this BLP model is all about integrity. Okay. Kindly let me know, or else I will explain.
Basically WhatsApp messages.
Okay. क्या होगा उससे?
Sir, means in a group particularly अपन मैसेज भेज रहे हैं, that is a plan, means हम लोग कर रहे हैं, but वो confidential नहीं है कुछ चीज.
नहीं, we are talking about integrity in this model. Confidential नहीं है इसमें. Bharat, I will repeat. Kindly let me finish this. I will repeat. We are having 5 minutes more.
इंटीग्रिटी बेसिकली ऐसे मेंटेन करना है कि नीचे वाला कोई उसको मॉडिफाई ना कर सके, जो भी इंफॉर्मेशन है उसके लिए.
करेक्ट. So basically ऐसे assume करो, or you can think it like this, कि I am preparing a black book. Okay. So you know that you can't have a single version. You people have multiple versions. आज एक बनाया, उसमें change हुआ, वापस कल एक बनाएंगे, परसों एक बनाएंगे, keeps on and on, right? So for example, I have one version today. I name it as version 1, and tomorrow I will prepare one more version which is called as version 2. So now what happens is, suppose while presenting, if by mistake I refer to version 1 and not the latest version, then what happens is I may have some data which is old data. So what happens is I should always refer to the latest data, and for doing so we need to stick with the latest version. That is why we are saying that we can't read something from below. We have to read only from the data which is present at my level, or I can say the latest data. That is why we can't read down. You can see this is a hierarchy basically. It is from bottom to top. We are moving from bottom to the top. So whichever value is present at the top will be the latest value, and whichever value is present at the bottom will be the old value. So we have to always refer the data which is present at top. That is why a junior engineer, that is why an engineer can refer the data which is present at either confidential or sensitive or strategic. But the engineer can't refer a data which is present at a public level. Otherwise, what may happen? He or she may read a data which might be obsolete or which might be old data. So to avoid that, we have to maintain the integrity so that no changes, no incorrect changes are done to the data. So that whatever information we read, that is consistent with what is present on the server. So to keep it in mind, we are using this axiom which is called as no read down. That is, we can read up, but we can't read down. This is exactly opposite of what we did in the previous model. Correct, Kathy. If you modify the Nietzsche model, obviously the integrity is disturbed and the rest of the above model is affected too. That is why to avoid it, we always stick to the higher model value or the latest value. Clear? If it's clear, I can start with, I can quickly wind up with the last value, which is called as star integrity axiom, or it is again opposite of what we did in the case of Bell-LaPadula model. It is called as no write up. अभी आपको अंडरस्टैंडिंग आ गया होगा what no write up means, because we can write the information to our level, but we can't write it to a level present above us to avoid loss of integrity. बहुत confusing लगेगा आपको. You have to read it once again, all the 4 models one by one. The first model was all about confidentiality, that is Bell-LaPadula, simple security property. Second one was star property. Over here again we are having similar things, but it is exactly the reverse of what we did in confidentiality. Now let's stick to this. Just give me 2 minutes. Star property or the star axiom is all about no write up. Why we do so? Because we want to avoid any accidental change to the data or any change to the data by a mistake. For example, the junior engineer can write information in the public label, but that information should not be written to the confidential label. It is exactly opposite of what we did in your Bell-LaPadula model, right? Bell-LaPadula model में हमने क्या पढ़ा था कि जो भी information आपके पास है, you should pass it on to your seniors by writing to a higher level. But in this case, this is exactly opposite, because we are talking about integrity this time. So you have to make sure that the data doesn't get changed during the transit. So to avoid it, this is a very strict kind of model. That is, you are asking the person, asking the junior engineer, you have to update only the public level ka data, and you should not make any change to the confidential level data. So getting what I'm trying to say? So this is all about today. Kindly let me know if you're having any doubts.